The moment you stop begging to be noticed is the moment your value begins to change. Most people fear being forgotten, so they chase, explain, and fight to stay in someone's life. But what if your constant presence is the very reason your worth is being overlooked? Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is not another word. It is the courage to walk away and let your absence reveal what your presence never could. One of the greatest reasons people lose their value in the eyes of others is not because they lack kindness, loyalty, or love. It is because they give those qualities away without limits. They become so available, so predictable, and so willing to sacrifice themselves that their presence slowly becomes expected rather than appreciated. What was once a gift begins to feel like a guarantee. Human nature has a tendency to overlook what always seems certain. When someone believes you will always be there no matter how they behave, they often stop recognizing the effort, patience, and emotional energy you quietly invest every day. Your messages are expected. Your support is assumed. Your forgiveness becomes automatic. Without realizing it, you teach people that they can continue receiving the best of you without offering the same respect in return. This is not because you cared too much. It is because you forgot to care for yourself with the same devotion. Many people mistake self-sacrifice for love. They believe that constantly putting another person's needs before their own proves loyalty. They cancel their own plans, ignore their own emotional needs, and tolerate repeated disrespect simply to avoid disappointing someone else. At first, these sacrifices may seem harmless, but over time, every compromise quietly moves you further away from your own identity. The tragedy is that the more you abandon yourself, the less others often value what you are giving. Why? Because people naturally learn from what you consistently allow. If you repeatedly communicate that your time has no boundaries, others may begin treating it as if it has no value. If you constantly accept behavior that hurts you, some people will assume there are no consequences for repeating it, not because they are necessarily cruel, but because human behavior often adapts to the standards we establish. This is where self-respect becomes transformative. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is not pretending to be better than anyone else. It is the quiet decision that your kindness will never require abandoning your dignity. It is understanding that your attention, your loyalty, and your emotional energy are valuable resources. They should be shared generously with people who appreciate them, not endlessly poured into relationships where they are taken for granted. The moment you stop chasing validation, something remarkable begins to happen. Your decisions become clearer. Your emotions become steadier. You stop measuring your worth by how quickly someone responds, how often they call, or whether they constantly reassure you. Instead, your confidence begins growing from something much stronger, your own character. You know who you are regardless of another person's opinion. You know what you stand for, even when no one applauds you. That kind of confidence cannot be taken away because it was never borrowed from someone else's approval. This does not mean becoming cold or emotionally distant. It means learning the difference between giving from abundance and giving from fear. When your actions come from fear of being abandoned, every act of kindness secretly asks for something in return. But when your actions come from genuine self-respect, you are free to love without losing yourself. You can care deeply while still protecting your peace. Ironically, people often begin recognizing your value only after you stop trying to convince them of it. Not because you are playing games, not because you are trying to create jealousy, but because you have finally remembered a truth that was always there. Your worth was never meant to be negotiated. It was meant to be lived. When you reclaim your time, your purpose, and your emotional independence, your presence changes. You are no longer seeking permission to matter. You already know that you do. Whether others recognize it immediately or not becomes far less important because your confidence is no longer dependent on their attention. And that is where true freedom begins. Because the moment you stop chasing validation is the moment your absence gains the power that your constant presence never could. There is a strange truth about human nature that most people never notice until it is too late. The more constantly available something becomes, the easier it is to overlook its value. This does not apply only to relationships. It applies to opportunities, trust, loyalty, and even the people who stand beside us through every season of life. When something is always there without condition, many stop appreciating it, not because it has lost its value, but because its presence has become familiar. This is why silence often reveals what constant presence hides. Many people fear silence because they mistake it for weakness. They believe that if they stop calling, stop explaining, or stop trying to fix everything, they will simply be forgotten. So they continue chasing conversations that no longer bring peace. They continue defending themselves against accusations that never end. They continue giving energy to people who have already stopped valuing it. But silence has a different kind of power, not the silence of resentment, not the silence of emotional games, the silence of self-respect. It is the quiet decision to stop forcing your presence into places where it is no longer appreciated. It is choosing peace over endless persuasion. It is allowing your actions to speak where your words have repeatedly been ignored. For many people, this is one of the hardest lessons to learn. They believe love must always be loud. They believe loyalty means constant availability. They think proving their value requires endless effort. Yet the harder they try to convince someone of their importance, the more invisible they often begin to feel. Why? Because value cannot be forced into another person's awareness. It must be recognized. And recognition often requires space. When you constantly fill every silence, solve every problem, and rescue every relationship, you remove the opportunity for others to experience what your absence actually means. They never have to reflect because you never stop carrying the emotional weight. They never notice your effort because it has become part of the background of their lives. Healthy distance changes that. It is not created to make someone suffer. It is created to protect your own peace while allowing reality to reveal itself naturally. If someone genuinely values your presence, respectful space often deepens appreciation. It gives both people room to reflect, grow, and recognize what they bring into each other's lives. If someone only valued what you constantly gave them, that truth may also become clear. Either way, the silence teaches something words never could. There is another important lesson hidden inside quietness. Silence allows you to hear yourself again. When you stop chasing another person's attention, the noise inside your own mind begins to settle. You stop wondering why someone changed. You stop rehearsing conversations that never happen. You stop searching for perfect explanations. Instead, you begin asking far more meaningful questions. What kind of life am I building? Am I living according to my values? Am I protecting my own peace? Those questions lead to growth. Constant emotional pursuit rarely does. Silence also reveals character. People who genuinely care often respond with honesty, respect, and curiosity. They notice the change and reach out with sincerity. Others may only notice when they no longer have unlimited access to your time, energy, or emotional support. That difference tells you far more than endless arguments ever will. But remember this carefully. Your silence should never become a strategy to manipulate another person's emotions. The moment silence becomes a game designed to create guilt or force attention, it loses its integrity. Healthy silence is not about controlling someone else's response. It is about controlling your own. It is the decision to stop abandoning yourself in order to keep someone else comfortable. As you continue growing, you will discover that your value has never depended on how loudly you announce your presence. The people who truly appreciate your character will not need constant reminders. And those who only noticed you when you were endlessly giving may teach you an equally valuable lesson about where your energy truly belongs. Sometimes saying nothing is not giving up. Sometimes it is finally choosing yourself, because the silence born from self-respect often reveals more truth than 1,000 words ever could. There comes a point in every person's life when they must make a choice. They can continue spending their energy trying to convince others of their value, or they can invest that same energy into becoming someone whose life speaks for itself. One path is exhausting because it depends on other people's opinions. The other is liberating because it depends only on your own commitment to growth. The people who leave the strongest impression are rarely those who spend their days asking to be noticed. They are the ones who are deeply committed to building a meaningful life. They have goals that challenge them, principles that guide them, and a purpose that keeps them moving forward even when no one is watching. Their confidence is not built on applause. It is built on progress. Too many people make another person the center of their universe. They wake up wondering who texted them. They measure their mood by someone else's attention. They postpone their dreams while waiting for another person to appreciate them. Slowly, without realizing it, they stop living their own life and begin orbiting around someone else's choices. That is where attraction begins to disappear, not because they lack love, but because they have abandoned the very qualities that once made them unique. Purpose is attractive because it creates independence. A person with purpose is not emotionally unavailable. They are emotionally grounded. They care deeply, but they do not lose themselves in the process. They know that a healthy relationship should complement a meaningful life, not replace it. Their happiness does not disappear the moment another person becomes distant, because they have already built a life that continues moving forward. This is why growth matters so much. Every book you read strengthens your mind. Every skill you develop expands your opportunities. Every challenge you overcome increases your confidence. Every promise you keep to yourself builds self-respect. These small victories may seem invisible to the world at first, but together they create a character that cannot be imitated. People notice consistency. They notice discipline. They notice the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs constant recognition because they are too busy becoming the person they promised themselves they would become. Ironically, the less your life revolves around proving your worth, the more naturally your worth becomes visible, not because you are trying to create mystery, not because you are pretending not to care, but because your attention has shifted towards something far more important, your own development. There is another powerful lesson hidden inside personal growth. When you invest in yourself, your absence begins to carry meaning because your presence was always genuine. You were never trying to entertain people or perform for their approval. You were bringing real value through your character, your kindness, your integrity, and your consistency. When someone like that steps away, the space they leave behind feels different. It cannot be replaced by louder words or greater effort because authenticity cannot be copied. But remember this carefully. Your goal should never be to make someone miss you. That places your happiness back into their hands. Instead, make your goal to build a life so meaningful that whether someone notices your absence or not no longer determines your peace. Continue learning, continue growing, continue protecting your time, your energy, and your purpose. The people who genuinely belong in your life will appreciate the person you are becoming. Those who only valued your constant availability may quietly drift away, and that is not a loss. It is clarity, because every meaningful life naturally reveals who appreciates your presence and who only appreciated your convenience. In the end, the greatest legacy you leave is not how desperately you tried to be remembered. It is the quality of the life you built while everyone else was searching for attention. Because the people who become truly unforgettable are the ones who become deeply committed to a life they never needed anyone else's permission to build. The way people treat you is often influenced by the standards you consistently maintain. If you repeatedly ignore your own needs, accept disrespect, or make yourself endlessly available, others may begin believing that your time and energy have no boundaries, not because your value has changed, but because you have stopped protecting it. Healthy boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about teaching people how to remain close without costing you your peace. Many people fear setting boundaries because they worry others will become disappointed or leave. They believe saying no makes them selfish or unkind, but constantly saying yes while silently sacrificing your own well-being is not kindness. It is self-neglect. Over time, that pattern creates resentment, emotional exhaustion, and relationships built on imbalance rather than mutual respect. The strongest people understand something different. They know that respect begins with the way they respect themselves. They protect their time because they know it cannot be replaced. They protect their peace because they know constant chaos weakens their purpose. They protect their values because they refuse to compromise their character simply to keep someone comfortable. Ironically, healthy boundaries often improve relationships instead of damaging them. They create clarity. They remove confusion. They allow both people to understand what is acceptable and what is not. Instead of guessing where the limits are, everyone understands that kindness and respect must exist in both directions. Never confuse boundaries with emotional walls. Walls are built from fear. Boundaries are built from wisdom. A wall keeps everyone out. A boundary allows the right people to come closer while protecting you from relationships that repeatedly drain your energy. When you value your own presence, others learn that your time, attention, and loyalty are privileges, not guarantees, because the moment you respect your own boundaries is the moment others begin understanding the true value of your presence. There comes a moment when you realize that no amount of explaining will convince someone to see your value if they have already decided not to look. You can defend your intentions, justify your actions, and repeat your truth 100 different ways, yet some people will still misunderstand you. That realization is not meant to make you bitter. It is meant to set you free. Too many people waste years trying to prove who they are through words alone. They explain why they deserve respect. They argue for another chance. They constantly seek approval from people who have already shown little interest in appreciating them. But genuine confidence does not grow from endless explanations. It grows from consistent actions that quietly reflect your character. Your habits speak before your words ever do. The way you treat others, the promises you keep, the discipline you show, and the integrity you maintain create a reputation that no speech can replace. While some people are busy convincing the world of their worth, truly confident individuals are simply living it. They understand that lasting respect is earned through consistency, not through constant persuasion. This is why personal growth is so powerful. Every day you spend improving your mindset, strengthening your character, and protecting your peace becomes a silent message to the world. You no longer need to announce your transformation, because the way you carry yourself begins speaking for you. Confidence becomes visible in your calmness, your patience, and your refusal to seek validation from those unwilling to give it. Remember, not everyone will recognize your value, and that is perfectly acceptable. Your responsibility is not to convince everyone to appreciate you. Your responsibility is to continue becoming someone whose actions remain aligned with truth, purpose, and self-respect. Because when your life becomes your message, you no longer need to explain your worth. People either recognize it, or they quietly walk away. The final lesson is perhaps the most liberating of all. There was a time when you wanted people to notice your absence. You hoped they would realize what they lost. You imagined the day they would finally appreciate everything you had quietly given. Those thoughts are natural because every human heart wants to feel valued. But if your happiness depends on someone finally missing you, then your peace still belongs to them instead of to you. Real freedom begins when that changes. The strongest people are not the ones who make others regret losing them. They are the ones who continue building a meaningful life whether anyone looks back or not. They understand that their purpose is far greater than becoming unforgettable in someone else's story. Their purpose is to become unforgettable in their own. This shift transforms everything. You stop checking whether someone noticed your silence. You stop wondering if they regret their decisions. You stop measuring your progress by another person's reaction. Instead, you begin measuring your life by your own growth. Are you becoming wiser? Are you becoming more disciplined? Are you protecting your peace? Are you living according to your values? Those questions lead to lasting confidence because the answers depend entirely on you. Ironically, this is when your presence becomes the most powerful, not because you are trying to create mystery, not because you are playing emotional games, but because your life is no longer centered around being remembered. It is centered around becoming better. People naturally remember those who bring peace instead of pressure, confidence instead of desperation, and purpose instead of dependency. They remember those who remained authentic, even when life became difficult. But whether they remember you or not is no longer your concern. You have discovered something far more valuable than recognition. You have discovered inner freedom. Never let your future become a waiting room for someone else's realization. Some people will recognize your value too late. Some never will. Neither outcome should determine the direction of your life. Continue growing, continue learning, continue protecting your standards, continue investing in relationships where respect flows in both directions. Let your energy belong to people who appreciate your presence while they have it, not only after it is gone. That is where healthy relationships are built, and that is where lasting peace begins. In the end, your greatest victory is not becoming the absence they cannot ignore. It is becoming the person who no longer needs to be noticed to know their own worth. Because the day you stop needing others to miss you is the day you become truly impossible to replace.